Welcome to another deep dive. We're really thrilled to have you with us today.
Yeah, always great to be here.
Our mission here is always the same. We take a stack of information research, articles, raw data,
Yeah.
and we try to cut through the noise. We extract the critical insights you actually need to know.
And today's topic is, well, it's a big one.
It really is. Today's mission involves dissecting a highly sophisticated, slightly alarming shift in how threat actors are bypassing modern cybersecurity defenses.
Right. We're looking at a scenario where hackers aren't really trying to smash through the firewall anymore.
No, they're not. Instead, they are weaponizing the Internet's own obscure foundational infrastructure. They're hiding their operations in plain sight.
It is a fundamental shift in tactics. For decades, the whole, cybersecurity industry has focused heavily on boundary defense.
Building taller walls.
Exactly. Building taller walls, writing better signatures to detect malicious payloads. But this new approach, it essentially turns the plumbing of the internet into a sanctuary for attackers.
They're just blending into the background noise of the web's core protocols.
Absolutely.
So we're pulling our primary data today from a March 8, 2026 piece published in BleepingComputer by Abrams. And he unpacks some extensive brand new research from the cybersecurity firm Infoblox.
Really fascinating research.
The core hook here is that attackers are abusing trusted back-end infrastructure protocols to bypass reputation-based security filters entirely. Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
Because to understand how they are exploiting the architecture, we need a quick refresher on how the Internet's mapping system functions, specifically the domain name system, or DNS.
Right, the backbone of everything.
We all know DNS is the backbone here. It maps human-readable host names to IP addresses so browsers know where to route traffic. Think of it like the Contacts app on your phone. You type in google.com the name -n, and DNS looks up the IP address, the phone number, so your computer can connect.
That forward resolution is the part of the system everyone interacts with daily. You ask for a website, DNS gives you the IP address, but the crux of this Infoblox research relies on flipping that architecture upside down using reverse DNS.
Reverse DNS.
Yeah. So if forward DNS is a phone book or a contacts app, reverse DNS is caller ID.
Okay, caller ID.
You have the IP address, and you query the system to find out what host name is officially associated with it. And to make this global caller ID system function, the internet relies on a really highly restricted, specialized top-level domain called .ARPA.
.ARPA namespace. It originally stood for Address and Routing Parameter Area, right? Going all the way back to the ARPANET days.
Yeah, going way back.
It is arguably the oldest top-level domain in existence, but it's exclusively reserved for Internet infrastructure.
Right, it's not something you can just go register on GoDaddy.
Exactly. For standard IPv4 addresses, reverse lookups happen in the inadjure.arpa subdomain. And for the newer, massively expanded IPv6 protocol, they use ini6.arpa.
So when a server receives a connection, it takes the incoming IP address, reverses the digits, appends that .arpa suffix, and essentially asks the broader network, hey, who claims ownership of this IP?
Which brings us to a massive structural blind spot.
A huge one. Because .ARPA is designed strictly for back-end infrastructure communication, it operates under a completely different paradigm than consumer-facing domains.
Like a .com or a .org.
Exactly. If an attacker registers a new .com domain for a phishing campaign, there is a trail of metadata.
Right. Security vendors analyze the WHOIS data.
A registrar's reputation, the domain's age, the geographical location. If a domain was created 2 hours ago in a jurisdiction known for cybercrime, your email security gateway instantly flags it and throws it in the quarantine folder.
But .ARPA domains do not have that standard metadata.
None of it.
There is no WHOIS record for a specific reverse IP mapping. Security appliances are inherently programmed to trust .ARPA traffic.
Right, because they just assume it's standard, benign infrastructure nodes talking to each other to keep the internet functioning.
And the moment a security protocol relies on implicit trust without verification, it creates an attack vector.
And that is precisely the vector the Infoblox researchers observed being actively exploited in the wild.
Threat actors recognize that corporate email gateways and reputation scanners implicitly trust infrastructure domains.
Right. So their goal became finding a way to host their malicious phishing links directly inside that trusted .ARPA environment.
Here's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
Because the attackers are not just spoofing these IP addresses. They are acquiring them legitimately and configuring them through highly reputable channels, The Bleeping Computer article outlines a technical loophole they abuse to get this done.
It's clever.
It really is. First, they need control over a block of IP addresses, specifically IPv6 addresses. To get them without triggering alerts, they abuse tunneling services.
Let's expand on why tunneling services are so crucial to this operation. IPv6 adoption is still fragmented globally.
It's taking forever.
It really is. So to help bridge the gap, companies offer tunneling brokers. These are services that encapsulate IPv6 traffic inside standard IPv4 packets so they can travel across older networks.
Okay, makes sense.
And these brokers often hand out massive blocks of IPv6 addresses, sometimes entire /48 or /64 subnets for free automatically to anyone who registers.
Wow.
Automatically.
Yeah. Attackers script this process, instantly gaining legitimate control over millions of pristine, untainted IP addresses.
Once they control that massive block of IPv6 addresses, they inherently control the corresponding reverse DNS zone, that specific patch of the IP6.ARPA namespace.
Right.
In a standard setup, whoever controls that zone is supposed to configure PTR records, which are just basic pointer records that say, yes, this IP belongs to this specific infrastructure hostname.
But attackers realized they weren't restricted to just PTR records.
This is the architectural oversight that makes the whole campaign possible,
Yeah.
right? Exactly. The researchers found that some of the largest, most trusted DNS providers on the planet, and the article specifically names Cloudflare and Hurricane Electric, they allowed users to configure other types of DNS records inside these reverse zones.
Right. So rather than being restricted to pointer records, the attackers could create standard A records or AAA records directly inside the .ARPA namespace.
Yes, they could.
But wait, if .ARPA is meant solely for back-end infrastructure routing, why would a platform like Cloudflare even allow a user to set up an A record, which is designed to point a name to a web server inside that specific zone? It just seems counterintuitive.
It does, but it comes down to platform architecture and flexibility.
Okay.
Massive DNS providers often build unified, agnostic interfaces for managing zone files. To the DNS server software, a zone file is just a text file.
Right.
Instead of hard-coding strict rules that say, if the zone ends in .ARPA, entirely disable the creation of A records, the platforms prioritize flexibility for complex enterprise edge cases. They leave the door open.
And the attackers simply walked right through it.
Yeah. Walked right through it. They configured A records inside their .ARPA zones that pointed directly to their external phishing servers.
Taking that a step further, the synthesis of this attack is brilliant in a very dark way. The attacker generates a link that looks something like, and bear with me, d.e.6.3.0.0.0.0.0.0.0.2.ep6.ARPA.
It's a mouthful.
Right. But that link routes through a highly trusted provider like Hurricane Electric, utilizes the implicitly trusted .ARPA domain space, and resolves via a misplaced A record directly to a malicious site.
And when a corporate spam filter scans that link in an incoming email, it checks the reputation of the infrastructure.
It sees a pristine IPv6 block.
Right. A trusted major DNS host, and a core infrastructure top-level domain.
So the security tool categorizes it as benign and delivers the phishing email straight to the victim's primary inbox.
It bypasses almost every traditional domain reputation check on the market.
That's terrifying.
But the technical cloaking is really only half the battle. If a human actually saw that monstrous 30-character alphanumeric .ARPA URL in an email,
They would delete the message immediately.
exactly, it looks like a system error.
Yeah.
The threat actors have to pair this advanced infrastructure exploit with fundamental social engineering to actually get the click.
The source material details how they bridge that gap.
Mm-hmm.
The phishing emails themselves rely on classic, urgency-driven lures.
They promise a high-value prize, demand action on a suspended account, or offer a cash reward for a survey.
And to hide the terrifying .ARPA URL, they utilize image embedding. The email body contains a clean, professional-looking graphic with a large call-to-action button.
And the malicious .ARPA link is embedded entirely within the image tag.
So the victim never actually sees the reverse DNS hostname. They just click the graphic.
And clicking that graphic triggers a secondary layer of operational security.
Because the attackers do not want their newly minted .ARPA exploits analyzed by security vendors, right?
No, they want to keep them hidden. So the link doesn't send the user straight to the fake login page. First, it routes the connection through a traffic distribution system, or TDS.
Okay, if we think about how a TDS operates, it essentially functions like a highly observant security checkpoint or a ruthless nightclub bouncer.
A very ruthless bouncer.
Right. Picture a stressed-out HR manager checking emails on their mobile phone while connected to a coffee shop Wi-Fi network. They click the image in the email. The TDS instantly analyzes the incoming HTTP request.
It looks at the user agent string to confirm it's an iPhone.
It checks the IP address against databases to see it belongs to a generic commercial ISP serving that coffee shop.
And the TDS categorizes this as a valid, unsuspecting human target and seamlessly redirects them to the phishing credential harvesting page.
Conversely, imagine that same email is clicked by an automated sandbox environment running inside a cybersecurity firm's data center.
The TDS inspects the connection. It sees a headless Chrome browser.
It sees an IP address belonging to Palo Alto Networks or Amazon Web Services.
It sees missing refer headers.
And the bouncer says no.
Right. The TDS immediately flags the connection as a threat researcher or an automated crawler.
Instead of serving the phishing page, the TDS redirects that connection to a completely harmless Wikipedia article, or simply drops the connection and serves a 404 error page.
The threat actors are actively filtering their victims to hide their operation from the good guys, and it explains why Infoblox noted how incredibly short-lived these campaigns are.
What's fascinating here is the sheer velocity of the burn and churn cycle.
Yeah, these attackers only keep a specific .ARPA phishing link active for a few days, sometimes just hours.
They exploit the implicit trust, harvest as many credentials as possible from a targeted blast, and then voluntarily tear down the infrastructure before the slower manual human analysis can catch up.
By the time a security analyst gets a report of a compromised account, tracks down the original email, and attempts to analyze the link, the TDS is offline and the DNS records have been wiped.
The evidence evaporates.
It evaporates entirely.
It makes tracking the broader threat landscape incredibly difficult. But the BleepingComputer piece emphasizes that abusing the .ARPA namespace is just one facet of a much larger strategy.
Right, they aren't stopping there.
The attackers are aggressively hunting for any trusted infrastructure they can co-opt. The report highlights two other escalating techniques that are just as damaging: hijacking, dangling CNAME records, and subdomain shadowing.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, both of these techniques involve squatting inside the digital borders of highly reputable organizations. Let's look at dangling CNAME records first.
Okay.
A CNAME is an alias record. Imagine a major university wants to host a temporary promotional website for an alumni event.
Instead of building it on their own servers, they use a cloud provider like Amazon Web Services.
Right. They create a CNAME record in their DNS settings that points alumni-event.university.edu to a specific AWS S3 bucket they provisioned.
That makes perfect sense for a temporary event. But the vulnerability arises when the event ends. The university IT team goes into AWS and deletes the S3 bucket to save money.
But they forget to go back into their own DNS settings and delete the CNAME record.
So alumni-event.university.edu is still officially pointing to an AWS destination that no longer exists.
That is a dangling record. And threat actors run automated scripts scanning the internet for these exact scenarios.
Just constantly looking for them.
Constantly. When they find that the university's subdomain is pointing to an unclaimed AWS bucket name, the attacker simply goes into AWS, creates a new bucket using that exact same name, and hosts their phishing site there.
So instantly, the attacker has a malicious site hosted on a legitimate, highly trusted .edu subdomain.
Yes. And subdomain shadowing takes a different, perhaps more aggressive path.
Okay, how's that work?
Instead of looking for forgotten records, the attackers compromise the DNS administrator credentials of a legitimate company. They log into the company's GoDaddy or Cloudflare account quietly.
They don't disrupt the main website, though, right? Because that would sound the alarms.
Exactly. Instead, they silently create dozens of obscure new subdomains. Things like dev-test-portal.company.com or mail-update.company.com.
And point them to their own external phishing servers.
Yep. The scale of this collateral damage is staggering. The Infoblox research documented over 100 recent instances where threat actors successfully weaponized the subdomains of universally trusted entities.
Yeah.
They found hijacked subdomains belonging to federal government agencies, massive telecommunications firms, international media conglomerates, and global retailers.
The psychological impact on the victim is profound here. I mean, if a user is taught to hover over a link and check the URL, and they see a link that genuinely starts with a legitimate federal agency's web address, they are going to click it.
They absolutely will. The attackers are using the established, hard-earned trust of these institutions as a Trojan horse for credential theft.
It creates a scenario where the standard advice of Check the URL for typos is no longer sufficient.
It's completely insufficient now. The URL is spelled perfectly because it is technically the real domain. It's just co-opted via infrastructure neglect or compromised admin accounts.
So what does this all mean? If we synthesize everything we've covered today, the abuse of .ARPA reverse zones, the IPv6 tunneling, the ruthless filtering of the traffic distribution systems, and the hijacking of trusted subdomains, the overarching theme is that the Internet's defensive tools are being blinded by the Internet's own foundation.
That's the real takeaway.
Security appliances are designed to look for anomalies. But these threat actors have realized that the best way to bypass an anomaly detector is to become indistinguishable from the core infrastructure itself.
Which forces a radical shift in how we approach user defense. When the automated tools, the spam filters, the gateway scanners, the reputation engines are actively bypassed by attacks leveraging trusted protocols, the final line of defense is the user's operational security.
It requires a baseline level of skepticism for any unsolicited digital communication.
Exactly.
The practical application for you, listening right now, is a strict adherence to direct navigation. You cannot rely on the fact that an email landed in your primary inbox instead of your spam folder.
No, you can't.
You cannot rely on a URL looking legitimate because, as we've seen with CNME hijacking, the legitimate URLs are actively being weaponized.
If you receive an email claiming your bank account needs verification, or a shipping provider needs a customs fee, or a software subscription has expired, do not engage with the provided links or buttons no matter how pristine the email looks.
Open a new browser window, type the core website address of the service directly into your URL bar, and check your account status from the source. Bypassing the provided link entirely is the only guaranteed way to avoid the invisible infrastructure traps they have laid out.
This raises an important question. If our modern, multi-billion-dollar cybersecurity apparatus is still so vulnerable to the exploitation of implicit trust baked into legacy protocols like DNS systems designed decades ago, under the assumption that network participants were generally operating in good faith, what is the breaking point?
That's a huge question.
As threat actors increasingly utilize automated tooling and AI to map, analyze, and exploit every forgotten edge case configuration in the Internet's core plumbing, are we rapidly approaching a point where boundary defense is entirely obsolete? We may be trying to bolt high-security locks onto a foundation that was fundamentally engineered for open, frictionless communication rather than defense.
That is a profound tension to consider. The conflict between the Internet we built for connectivity and the Internet we need for security. It makes you look at the hidden architecture of the web in a completely different light. We want to thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it provided some valuable clarity on the sophisticated tactics evolving just beneath the surface of your daily digital routine. Take that final thought. Consider how much implicit trust you rely on when navigating your inbox. And most importantly, stay insanely curious. We will catch you on the next deep dive.